Hey there, listeners. I am trying to give you National Land gear. Submit a review of this podcast on Apple Podcasts, good, bad, or in between. We'll be reading these reviews on the next podcast and picking our favorite. We'll be selecting the winner in March of 2023, and we will base the winner on enthusiasm and originality. So be sure to submit those reviews on Apple Podcasts. Welcome to episode number 30 of the National Land Realty podcast, where we discuss all things land. Our goal here is to inform, educate, and entertain those of you who own land or are interested in the buying and selling of land throughout the United States. My name is Mac Christian, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at National Land Realty. I'll be your host for this episode. In this episode, I'm talking with Micah Ehling out of Pittsburg, Kansas. Micah joined National Land Realty in 2022 with 20 years of land improvement consultancy experience and, 20 years of paramedic experience, including 9 years as a flight medic. Needless to say, with his experience, Micah understands how important it is to maintain good relationships when it comes to land. Land buyers and sellers should find land professionals who aren't out to just make a sale. The value that a land professional brings to the table goes well beyond the sale, and we're here to talk about that. Now sit back and enjoy. I am sitting here with Micah Ehling out of Kansas, and Micah started his career as a paramedic with about 10 years on the ground and about 9 years doing helicopter work, right? I mean, you're a flight medic and
Yes.
doing things from the sky, all that while running for 20 years doing habitat management. So you got that hustle. Tell me a little bit about your background. Tell me how you got to National Land.
So, I started in EMS, and obviously I've always been in outdoors my whole life. And, we always, the food plot era hit, seemed like about 20 years ago. That's when everybody was starting to do it. And so we started doing that stuff, and me and my brother and friends. And so we just kind of got into that, that whole realm of everything, and working EMS. And then you have a schedule that allows you a lot of time off because you work essentially 10 days a month is what I worked on the ambulance with some overtime in there, but you work 24-hour shifts, then you're off for 2 or 3 days. So in that time, you're just looking for other stuff to do, whether it be construction stuff or, if the time allows and the seasons allow, then, food plots, and then turned it into a little small business, got a little tractor tiller, and I started doing people's properties for them and stuff like that, for a little extra money. And, as my career went on, then I went to the air, and air is a little bit, believe it or not, a little bit safer than the ground. And in the sense that the company doesn't allow you to work that many hours. They only want you to work 7 days a month. So then you have even more time. Of course, I have 2 children that keep me really busy. They're now 11 and 15, but at the time, they were quite a bit younger. And,
You had me looking at my desk. I thought that was my phone.
I was looking around too. So anyways, as just time goes on, and, we purchased a farm, and, that's, kind of when we met Jeremy Ayler, who's now my broker. But, we did everything through Jeremy. Let's see, when we sold that one, purchased another one, and then this last one that we just sold, we went ahead and just involved Jeremy in all of it. I just started thinking a couple years ago. In fact, I even talked to Jeremy about it, and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, I think you'd be a great fit to go, selling land and stuff." And he said, if you ever decide to do it, I'd obviously love to have you on our team, and so. I guess kind of stepping back a little bit. Last couple of years, I went down and I got hired to set up a high fenced ranch, all the hunting program side of it, from the food plot structure to the blinds, all that stuff. And that was down in Texas. And so I kind of maintained that. Now they bought another one, so I'm going to have to set up another one. I've just kind of been bouncing back and forth and doing a little bit EMS part-time. and trying to phase out of that as I've gotten older, and being in it for so long. I did every facet that you can think of in EMS, from deputy coroner to air. So it's just, you got to tailor yourself out of stuff at some point. And so I thought, well, I love outdoors. I love land. I just got to do this. So both feet in, jumped in, got the class done, passed the test, did the pre-licensing thing, and boom, right out of the chute. And here I am, in 2023, just joined in 2022 with National Land. And I think it's just I know it's the company I work for, but it's really a good company, and everyone's so helpful. So I'm just happy to be aboard of such a great team.
Yeah.
Because that's what oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
That's what I've dealt with for so long is teamwork and everything. So that's a huge part to me, is the communication side and having the openness and clarity that you get from everybody. Logan's great. Everyone that I've met, I've only been talking to you for a couple of minutes. Obviously, I saw you on podcasts or other stuff, but you haven't
got to know me well enough to know how obnoxious I am. So that's good. That's good. We're still on the up and up.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of like the long story short, I guess, of, how I became where I am now. And this job can allow you to be as busy as you want or as slow as you want. You put as much into it, that's what you'll get out of it. And fortunately for me, I like to be going. So, which can lead us into, client relations. Really.
Well, and you're talking about just joining up in 2022 as far as like, hawking dirt, right? At a certain point, we work with dirt, but you sort of working with habitat improvement and land management for, 2 decades. It's a lot of the same thing, where you are a consultant for dirt, and then like, this is how you improve it. This is how you manage it for this type of use. This is how you manage it for, particularly, it sounds like you specialized in food plots, to where, right, going in, it might be sort of a new field in terms of selling land or whatever, but in terms of managing it, this is something that, 2 decades of experience gives you sort of a leg up on pretty much any kind of knowledge. You're not so green, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Sure. Well, and you got to insert yourself into the stuff that you love. And so you learn about the ground, and you learn about land, and you learn about CRP programs and different grasses and different trees and tree harvest and, timber stand improvement and hinge cutting. You learn all that stuff. And then all of a sudden you realize that, man, I really am kind of valuable in knowledge, which you don't really want to say that about yourself, but it's like, you sit there one day like, man, I can steer people in the right direction on several things. Now, if I don't know the answer, I'm going to find out, because I'm not one of those that thinks I know everything, because you just don't. I learned that in medicine a long time ago. If you think you know everything about medicine, you'll get that call that'll slap you right back down to earth and be, you gotta, it's always learning. And that's probably what draws me to this occupation right here is, you're never going to not learn something dealing with something about it, whether it be title work or take yourself all the way out in the field,
Yeah. Well, so, I want to jump into the land selling side of things, but I wanted to sort of ask you about when you were working with building habitats for particularly with food plots and game management and stuff. When you worked with clients through that, was it typically a landowner, existing landowner that had land kind of sitting around and wanted to improve it? Or was it somebody that had just made a purchase or was looking at purchasing that particular piece of land that you would work with?
So it was a mixture of both. But a lot of the people that buy from out of state, they really got to find somebody local that they can hinge off of to make their investment and their overall experience a success. So that's where I think that land professionals, land agents come in play. And I really think that this is definitely a niche market. I believe that's my opinion, that there's not a whole lot of people. There might be land agents out there, but the knowledgeable ones, I don't know this, for a fact, but I think that in order to be one, you should know that kind of stuff so that you can supply your client, your buyer with, even your seller. What if they go to sell their property and they're like, their gates are all nasty, and appearance is everything, right? Like kitchens and bathrooms sell houses. Well, so does gates and aesthetics, So
yeah. Well,
it's the same. It's the
there's
same.
little things in there with it's kind of something that we run into a lot, right? With people that will work with a residential primary, somebody who works with residential real estate that happen to land a listing, in a rural area, and you work with them to buy it or sell it. And there's certain things that they're not going to know. Like they're not going to know that, if you're on a north face, that you're not going to see bare ground until July in some areas, right? If you don't have water rights and you expect to run cattle on the land and the water rights don't carry over, that you're kind of out of luck. Or there, and it can go even further as far as like somebody who knows how to check into mineral rights, or someone who knows how to check into, the different easements that could be on the property, or if somebody needs to do a 1031 exchange. The skill set is so much different than what you might find in residential. And then even as you go into the land side of things, it all depends on your region, right? If you're in Kansas and you're looking at, a cropland or farmland, and, somebody that you're working with is primarily a forester, it's probably not going to be as beneficial to you. You want to make sure that the person has the skill set that you can work with, because there's a lot more consultancy that goes into land real estate than you would find anywhere else in any other industry. And then the transactions, right? The transactions take much longer in land because there's a lot more to evaluate. You don't have to go in and buy a house and look at soil pH very often, but
right.
Land, you have to look at those kind of things, right?
Right. And, the upspike and tillable would, and everybody wanting that right now. I mean, that just to your point, just then, knowing that kind of stuff, is this good? Is this good tillable ground? Is it bad tillable ground? Is it raucous? Is it just, that people want to know that stuff. I mean, just those little things, what's the drainage? And is it terraced? Everything, or is it flat? There's a lot of stuff that really goes into that stuff that I think a lot of people probably discount, when they're, there's probably a lot of buyers out there that aren't educated in that side of it. And I think that's where we probably should insert ourselves into, giving them suggestions, because they're getting ready to invest a lot of money.
Oh, especially in the Midwest right now, right? You got records. Right. The records have popped up in Iowa, in Kansas, where you are. They popped up in Nebraska. Just sold land for $30,000 an acre, set a national record. Iowa has set several records, $27,000, $28,000 an acre. And a lot of people are looking at cropland and farmland as a hedge, right? Because it is. It tends to move counterproductive to a lot of markets out there. It tends not to fluctuate too much. It's food bearing, means it holds value. You have Bill Gates just purchased, I think his accumulated land right now is 272,000 acres, somewhere around there.
Wow.
Which doesn't even put him in the top 30 landowners in the U.S., but it's still quite a bit of land. But people are investing in it as a hedge product to help produce food. And so you need that consultant on the ground that is going to help you make a good purchase and make the right one, right?
Right. Yep. I totally agree with that. Yep. I mean, the more knowledge you have about, this is what we're doing. We owe that to ourselves, even just to know what's going on out there.
Oh yeah.
Especially on the farming side of it right now,
Well, and that's sort of half the battle, right? Is the acquiring the land, but the conversation that we're jumping into is a little bit after, right? So not only do you want to work with somebody up until you want to make a good decision while you get there, but especially for those people who have bought out of state, especially for people who have bought land. And especially when you talk about that, you'll see investors that buy out of state for cropland and let somebody else manage the property. But a lot of what we see is that recreational tract where they buy land for hunting or land for, camping. Isn't as often that you see that. There's some that you'll see with waterways, like some fishing areas. But a lot of what we see is just it's a piece to get out of state and go hunting. And you want to make sure that the land is managed while you're gone because you're out of state. You mentioned it yourself, right? You've had a couple of people that you've worked with that are out of state. Tell me about those.
Right. So, so one gentleman from Pennsylvania, sold him 2 parcels right out of the hat. And, some of it was tillable and then the rest was timber. And, we just, right out of the gate, we just we hit it off and we got those transactions done and he was asking me a few questions. I said, "Hey man, I'm here for whatever you need. Like, you just let me know." I was like, "If you want me to get with the local sporting goods store to get your blinds or your feeders or whatever you need to, whatever you want to do, I'll help you, design, whatever." And, then of course, then the next question that he came up with, what do you know about the farmer that's farming it now? Do you know any other farmers that you would recommend? So, even knowing other people that you would trust and put if I would have them farm my own ground, I would definitely send them to my client for sure. And they want to be able to trust. Pennsylvania, I don't know how many miles it is away, but it's a little bit. So, when just like what I'll just say Paul and me talk a lot. We were just texting this morning that you find any sheds, and, feel free to go down to the property and see what horns are on the ground there, but, he's wanting food plots put in next year. And, I said, well, I can help you with that. And then, just from here on out, helping him, fill up his feeders. I just went and frost seeded a clover plot for another client and then filled up protein feeders for him. Mm-hmm. So, you just got to stay. And I feel like, I wouldn't say that you have to message every client you have, but I think that there is a lot of stock that goes into staying in touch with people because you never know when they are going to need anything.
Yeah. And I think you almost have to, where when you jump into a piece of land, it's not like you jump in and you replace the counters and you're done. Or you paint the walls and you get all the pretty stuff done in the house and you walk away. Like, land is the ownership of it is more of a process, and it's a long process. It takes a while to make those changes, and it takes much more finesse, I guess, to jump in. How much planning goes into bringing up and I'm just saying like residential where you go in, you can paint the house and you're done, but you got some timber and you need to thin the timber. You thin it out according to how it's going to be in 10 years. And then you thin it out according to how it's going to be in 20 years. And you got to get that crown spacing. You're talking about a 20-year incremental change where in the meantime, you got to take care of the understory. And it helps to have somebody who knows the local area, to know the resources to get a hold of. And because a landowner can find somebody, but they might be a crook, right? So you need other resources to back it up.
Right. Yes. And and to your point, I think that there's a lot of people out there, honestly, we know that take advantage of people. And obviously the buyer went through you to purchase the property. So they obviously throughout that whole process have instilled a lot of trust in you. Spending that kind of dollar amount on a recreational piece to go enjoy themselves, the last thing they want to do is have a bad experience. So being able to give them, not only support during the transaction, but after is huge. And I think that it would benefit everybody greatly.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think it's one of the most important things that you can do, especially from a client perspective, right? If you're going into a deal to purchase land, when you work with a land agent, you want to get a sense of a partnership that's going to last as opposed to a transactional relationship was like, hey, there's your ranch. Good luck. See you down the road.
Right.
Like,
right. Yeah. We're not driving through McDonald's to grab a cheeseburger, So yeah, it's just, I just, and I've been I think that anybody who has dealt with land has been on the other side of it, been a client. And so I really feel like you need to, and it goes back to patients that I used to pick up on the ambulance and the helicopter. I treat them as an extension of my family, because that's how you, Mac, if I picked up one of your relatives, you would want them to be treated, kindly, just like you, I just always put everybody as an extension of myself. And so you want to be, it's no different with your clients. You want people to trust you, and at the same time, whether they're having whether the people on the medical side were having a good day or a really emergent day, you want to be there for them in some way, shape, or form to make them feel comfortable and going forward. And I believe that that's the same with what we do in land.
Right.
I know it's on a different scale, but it's the same,
Well, and you brought up a specific instance, right, where, because you mentioned your client where you're doing the frost seeding, but I don't know if we jumped at it on the recording, but you were talking about it beforehand, that this person was out of state and they couldn't get to these things because of, local situations. You want to elaborate on that a little bit? Because I think that's a cool story.
As far as local situations, I can't remember what we were.
You were talking about hurricane, right? Or was that?
Yeah. So, two young guys bought a property here. It's about 60, 70 miles to the west of us, and they bought it and they loved it, and they came and they spent summer, and then I think they spent like a week here, doing their food plots and doing their feeder stuff and trying to rent equipment and do all that stuff, and they really got whipped. There were two younger guys like, oh my gosh, what did we get into? And then, the untimely things always occur, just we're hit with a hurricane, and all of a sudden, what's going to go first? Well, their land, they're just like, man, we don't have time to deal with that. And so, it's time to offload. And so it was that quick, but they didn't have any resources. If they had somebody that they could have thought, I'm sure they would have kept it. But when you're 60, 70 miles to the west of us, it's pretty thin on people. There's a little bit of a gap there between us and Wichita, that there's just some pretty open place.
Well, so, taking that even into account, like, you want to maintain a long-term partnership with a land professional way after you purchase land, because if you're out of state and you've invested in something could always go wrong, where then all of a sudden, let's say you have your stuff together and you have no problem dealing with the land. You can't deal with the things that are outside of your control, like a family sickness or a storm or something like that, where then all of a sudden you can't take care of it and you have to offload it. And if you haven't maintained that relationship with a land professional, then you got to find a new one. And that's where you could be up a creek real fast. Somebody less trustworthy could come along. You could find somebody who maybe you shouldn't be dealing with, and you don't have that long-term relationship, and things become difficult. And then you're stuck in a situation of where you're desperate and you just have to go with it anyways. Right. You don't want to set yourself up for those kind of things. Right. Yeah. We all want to come out, on top and have everything go smoothly. And unfortunately, that sometimes doesn't go that way, but, National Land did not sell them that property, but we ended up selling it for them, but through a different agency. Gotcha.
See? So, but I have no doubt in my mind that had the land professionals out of Chanute, if they would have handled that from the beginning, things may have been different. I don't know that for a fact, but they're great people. I know who they are. They're great. And they have unlimited resources, and they've been over backwards to help people. So I know that they would have helped them.
Oh yeah. Well, and how often do you have people that you have just sort of relationships with? How often do you hear from them on a regular basis? Like, I mean, did they reach out to you about their land pretty regularly? And is it? And I guess the thing that I'm asking is it? Do you ever look at it like, oh man, again?
No, I mean, I don't really, I can't say that I have anybody that's like, like have my soybeans grow every like 2 days, or, because there is those people out there, how much rain did we get? Like, but, and that's all great. Cause I already know it. I already know the answer cause I'm monitoring for myself anyway.
Right.
So it's easy, got right here. And, so, just lots of things, just, what's going on down there, what's it looking like, big thing this year for the duck hunters was what's river level like, what's the rate do we get? Everyone wanted to know because the drought was so bad that all the duck hunters were just scrambling, no water. And so every time we'd have the little slightest percent chance of rain, get a few texts,
I never thought about using a land professional as a bird hunting scout, but no, you gotta. There's a strong point to be made there. You got somebody with boots on the ground, and we just came back from the national conference for National Land, and that's the one thing. You've got all these people from across the country, and most of them are strangers. Most of them have never met in person. Some of them have gone to the previous conferences and stuff, but all you just have to do is tell one lie about the outdoors and you got a friend immediately. And when I say lie, I just mean story, right? Like everyone there is just obsessed with the outdoors and dirt to where like, you're not really putting somebody out. If you like, hey, how's, are the deer out? Like that's going to spark a whole conversation. It's not going to put somebody out to respond to you.
Right. Well, and that's what's crazy too. So like one of these gentlemen, he's like, he just wants to know when's the best time to come to Kansas? I've hunted Kansas for a long time. I just never have quite been able to pinpoint when, so relaying your own knowledge of the area is wonderful. And then all of a sudden, the next thing is, man, I got a lot of black bears up here in Pennsylvania. You need to come up here and hunt them. I mean, that's crazy, that it happens that quick.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of trust right there and confidence in somebody to go ahead and invite them up to your home state, so I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is the one thing that emerged from, we had that too at the national conference where there's people that you've never met and all of a sudden everyone's linking up to where like, okay, you got a good spot to go and, you got a good spot in Pennsylvania and I live out west. So everybody's, talking to me about chukar and mule deer. Like, oh yeah, you live out there. You have a couch, right? Yeah. But I mean, that's the kind of thing that happens when you meet, when you familiarize yourself with people that are into the outdoors, you kind of form these bonds and these partnerships, and you have to have somebody that's along for the ride with you along, as you go through the process.
Right. Yeah. You gotta have a buddy, like, and somebody that you can lean on in different aspects, I mean, even people, one of the big things across the Midwest is now hunting cabins or hunting camps. So, I mean, I would even take it to the step further, to know, construction crews and plumbers and electricians. And I mean, all that stuff, that makes you valuable. I mean, I know right now you can dial up Jeremy Ehler and ask him to give you a reference of somebody that can do something. He'll be able to tell you. I mean, that's what we should, like I said, and the big thing right now too is the duck hunting, to know people that are doing dirt work, the NRCS, the US, all those people, the surveyors, the engineers. I'm working on one right now for a guy that lives in Georgia, and kind of handling the oversight of the duck marsh that he's building. Meeting with the engineers out there, meeting with the NRCS, going through their LiDAR system, which is super cool. Look where the water goes and designing that, and then everything to the water control structures and getting everything laid out, and then getting that guy to do the dirt work, having a guy. I mean, you're getting ready to drop it doesn't matter the dollar amount. Everybody that's listening to this would know how much it costs to build a duck marsh. You want the right dirt work guy. You don't want a levee blowing out. You want the right pitch to the levee. You know, if the river gets out there, you don't want it washed out in the first year. You got to know, you got to have somebody here. I mean, this guy from Georgia, he's got to instill trust in me that as soon as that levee's done, I'm going to get the seed on it to get that thing locked up to where it's not going to wash out. So, I mean, it's all a snowball effect, really.
So, what's fun about that is you're talking about that like everybody understands that because you've done it for so long. But living out west, I have no idea what it takes to build a duck marsh. But I can tell you right now, I'm 100% terrified at ever thinking about having to do that myself. The first person I'm going to call if I ever have to do anything like that, because, oh my gosh.
Well, and it just like all that stuff just comes with time, and being around the hunting industry. And just like if I were to go hunting out west, I've hunted mule deer a few times, but I'd be picking somebody else's brain too on them because they're tricky when it gets out there.
It is. Yeah, well, yeah. And I was just thinking about, for me, duck hunting is fairly popular out here. And a lot of times when we, anywhere west of the Mississippi, there's so much public land that you go out into a river, you go to a lake, and it's not so much like a private land hunt. But if I was thinking about it, the duck hunting is so good, in your neck of the woods. Mm-hmm. Somebody like me would look at like, I'm going to purchase some land with some water and, try to get this and do some duck hunting. But I really wouldn't know what I was in for. And right. You gotta cultivate it a little bit. And if I didn't have somebody like you to talk to, I'm in a mess.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm sure people have seen it, but Stuttgart, Arkansas used to be the duck capital of the world. Well, Waterfowl magazine came out last year, and the two top places, number one is Southeast Kansas. I mean, in the world, that's crazy. And then right south of us is northeast Oklahoma.
Because it's shifted, right? Like the whole, like the migratory routes have all shifted. Yeah.
And I can't help but think that, I mean, along the Neosho River, which is so sought after around here, from Chautauqua to St. Paul, everybody has a duck marsh now. And there's a lot of them. They're planting food for ducks.
That's so funny.
But I say every animal, including us, is a slave to their stomachs. Like that's what they are. Everything goes to where food is.
And you got to knows how to arrange that, or else you're not going to pull them in.
Right.
I get a kick out of that. Well, cool, man. Well, walk me through, somebody wants to get out in Kansas and link up with a terrific land professional that hangs out and helps them cultivate things. How do they get a hold of you?
Oh, email or which is Micah Ehling at nationalland.com, or my cell number 620-249-4952. And I mean, it's obviously on our website. And and there's a whole bunch. Everybody around here has the same mentality that I have, and which is good,
Well, I mean, I want to correct you there and say, no, they don't. You're the only person that thinks like this. So you're the only person that anybody wants to talk to, right? You got to run this a little tougher on people. You're like, you know what? No one's ever thought of this before. I'm the only one that does this.
Yeah, I'd be glad to talk to anybody. It's fun. I probably get at least a couple calls a week about, developing stuff. And I think I rewind back to what you talked about earlier is the 20-year on the timber thing. Having a plan as to what you're doing and what it's going to affect in the next 15, 20 years, is that going to be a good thing? Is that going to be a bad thing? I think these are big decisions because I know I've walked into places like, oh my gosh, we should do that. We should do that. And then after you start thinking about, you don't want to change anything that drastic, So I think a lot of forethought goes into that stuff.
Well, yeah, and that's where your experience comes in with somebody working with somebody like you, as opposed to just walking in like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to rip all the trees out. Like you could make a huge mistake that you can't correct for 50 years.
Right.
And so somebody like you that can temper the expectations, like, you know what you're doing here, this might not be as huntable next year. Because when people want to hunt the land when they buy it, like you're probably not going to pull anything in next year. You're probably looking at like a 3-year window where in 3 years it's going to be amazing. and you can sort of like walk them back off the edge a little bit.
Yeah, you gotta curb that. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, as everybody, just like when you buy a new home, what's the first thing everyone wants to do? Let's go paint.
Yep.
We gotta do something to our taste. It's no different than with land, especially recreational. Everybody wants to do something to make it like theirs. They don't want somebody else's thing. And in the mid 2000s, when the land flipping was really going on, that could be done because there was a lot of neglected ground. There was a lot of, the baby boomer parents were aging and failing in health, and a lot of stuff was being sold. And unfortunately, a lot of that stuff was neglected for so long. And there's still those properties out there.
Yeah.
You just got to turn them over.
That's why agents like you are out there to help them do it.
Right. Yeah. I'm ready.
There we
ready
go.
To rock.
Well, hey, Micah, I appreciate your time. I really appreciate your expertise here. I love hearing about this stuff. So
I appreciate you having me.
Yep. Let's do it again.
Yes, sir. I'll be ready and waiting. We'll come up with a new thing to talk about.
Heck yeah. All right. Much appreciated. This concludes episode number 30 of the National Land Realty podcast, discussing land professional relationships after the sale with Micah Ehling of Pittsburg, Kansas. You can learn more about land ownership and the buying and selling of land at nationalland.com.